this absolutely does not feel right. Get married at this age or no man's gonna want you. I
Mhm.
was in my 20s when I got engaged, mid 20s when I got married. There were many moments where I was like, oh God, this like hurts. Like I was just buying into what I thought I had to do at the time.
You've been going through such a transformative year.
Mm,
I'm sure it feels longer than a year for you because the process probably started
yeah,
a while back.
yeah. Are we talking about the divorce?
I'm talking about, yes, wait, I'm going to give context. You're right. I'm just like,
I'm
I
like,
know you.
which part of my life are we talking about?
I'm like, I know you. Yeah, I'm just going into it. But yes, it was a transformative year in many ways.
Yeah.
But one of the ways that you've been very public about was your divorce.
Mm,
And I was watching your YouTube series that you did, which I loved. It was so refreshing, so raw, and very inspiring in many ways, even for people that are not going through it, like
yeah.
myself. But I would love for you to kind of take me back to when was that moment where you're
Yeah.
like, I need to finish this chapter in my
Yeah.
life?
Well, it's really interesting because I get that question a lot where it's like, were you so sad when it happened? And the answer is no, because I think what people don't realize is that the divorce happens emotionally way before it actually happens on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And so, without going into super specific details, but my ex and I, we were having issues for a very long time, which I never shared on the internet. And I think you can relate. You just don't have to share all of your problems on the internet. And
Mm-hmm.
so when people found out that I was going through a divorce, they were so shocked. But for me, I was like, I've been struggling internally by myself for so long, for I would say 6+ years on my own. And so when I knew it had to happen was way delayed when it actually should have actually happened. And so maybe it might have been a surprise to the public and my peers. I didn't even share with my family during that time because I really, really, no one gets married to separate. That's a fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like no one goes into marriage being like, okay, we're gonna get a divorce someday. No, you don't do that. Of course, divorce rates are high and things happen that are out of our control, but we all go in with a positive mindset. So for me, when I was in it, I was like, I don't care how miserable I am. I don't care how much work I have to put into this marriage. I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna give myself 5 years and push, push, push to make it work. So I was suffering for so long. And so when I finally had that moment of like, I just can't do this anymore, that was at a point where I was not good mentally myself. And I was like, it's either I choose me or it's
Mm-hmm.
going to become very scary and bad for me, or I'm going to try to keep pushing and literally, I don't know. It's scary to think of what could have happened, right? To me
Yeah.
personally, if I kept pushing that way. And so I decided to choose me, and that was about 3 years ago.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
the separation itself happened 3 years ago.
About 3 years ago.
Okay.
And then it got finalized, 2023 last year.
Okay, so that's maybe why I have my timeline as the public.
Yes.
I see it as a year ago. Okay, so it's been a journey for you. But
Yeah.
for me, I'm always curious. I have friends that either went through divorce or going through divorce. I'm always curious to ask, like, when did you feel or how did those cracks started appearing?
Mm,
Because to your point, it is a process of many years.
yeah.
It's not something that people like take lightly, but it
Yeah.
is a choice. Divorce is a
Mhm.
choice. So when did you start feeling, okay,
Yeah.
it's, we're moving in different directions?
Yeah. I think marriage is a very beautiful thing, and I think the number one word that comes up to me, when I think of marriage is partnership. I think
Mm,
of a team, right? And so even though when I was hurting and I was struggling and I was trying to push this thing forward, I soon realized that I was the only one doing that. I didn't have a partner to do that with me. And so early on, I knew. I was like, I'm obviously the one that's trying to push this forward, and I
mm,
don't have a partner with me that's trying to push as much as I'm pushing. And for a while, I was like, that's fine. I have family, I have kids, I could do this on my own. I my marriage can suffer, my relationship with my partner can suffer, but I'm not going to get a divorce. Like, there's no way I'm going to do that because I have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew pretty early on when I didn't have, even though I physically had a partner, I didn't emotionally have a partner. And that was very early on in the marriage. And I think that's the hardest part is you just feel like you're with someone, but you feel so lonely because I'm gonna cry. You just feel, oh, like your podcast title. It's like you feel alone. Like you think that you have a partner because there's a physical human body next to you, but I've never felt more alone in my life than during those 5 to 6 years.
Which I feel is scarier.
Yeah.
When you have, it's kind of like a mind game because everything on the outside looks like,
Yeah.
you know, it's working. There's something here,
Yeah.
but then on the inside, it's a completely different
Yeah.
world.
And when I see people like you and Gary, and of course, like I don't know internally what goes on, but externally what you guys share, it really does look on the outside like a team, right? Like you guys are going back and forth, whether it be the podcast or the business. And I'm not saying that you have to work together, but I'm just saying that it feels like a true partnership in that sense. You guys are working towards a common goal. And I think that's beautiful. I know there's many challenges on top of being married and working together. But
Yeah.
the fact that you're able to work towards a common goal, to me, that is a true partnership. And that's beautiful.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's definitely my idea of what marriage is because I got married super young. I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
Like, what did I know about the world or myself?
Yeah.
But thankfully, I married someone that really gave me the space and opportunity and shared his own experience,
Yeah.
right, that I can kind of derive from. But I had a completely different idea
Yeah.
of what marriage is.
Yeah.
I thought that it's a very like, okay, step 1, step 2, and now we have kids and I'm going to be home and you're going to do this. And then there's so many small little
Yeah.
everyday dynamics, factors that go into that, into the aspect of partnerships, of like, it's so much bigger than love even.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is funny because the one thing, and this is no offense to you, because obviously you guys have a beautiful relationship and you guys have come this far. But my number one advice to people is don't get married young. But it's like, what did you
Yeah.
guys do? Like in your head, you're like, I got married so young, but we're still here. You guys obviously have been doing something right. And it's obviously working. Does something stand out to you?
I think that I always talk about it. First of all, I feel like my number one daddy issue, which I absolutely have.
Are you a daddy issue girl?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm very proud
We
of
love our
it.
daddy issue girls.
Yes.
I'm sure I'm raising some daddy issue girls too.
I'm very proud of it because it helped me navigate and see the world in a different way.
Yeah.
But when I met Gary, I think that for the longest time, I couldn't really understand what was the thing that drew me.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people assumed he was older, he had already a career, and that was, you know, the sparkling thing. But I mean, I've dated and seen that world, you know, of money before. I come from the fashion world. So it's not like this was something different. But what I felt when I met Gary was this feeling that I think I never had because I didn't have a father figure in my life, of that calmness and security and grounding energy. And because I felt that I know that this man, no matter what's going to happen, will never run away. Like, how can you? That's so powerful.
He felt like home to you.
It felt like home.
Yeah.
It felt like I'm not alone anymore,
Yeah.
you know, because I come from a broken home. I come from a place where, you know, I did feel abandoned and I did feel like I need to figure it out. And I didn't let myself open up to people because it's like you're in survivor mode.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when you have this energy beside you that can just like, relax, don't worry, we got this. We have it figured out.
Yeah.
That was it for me. And it took me a long time to recognize that because I was very young to be able to, you know, go back. But that's what it was for me. And I'm very, very happy that although I was very young, I followed my intuition on that.
And I think that's the number one thing why I always advise people not to get married young is because you don't have a strong sense of what your intuition is.
Mm.
But maybe you did, because you had to work young. You've gone through so many issues already, whether it be family or your career, that you just had a strong gut intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think us, especially as women, we all already know the answer to almost everything, is if we just stopped and like listen to our bodies. And it's like, okay, how does my body feel? Because immediately when you feel something in your body, that is usually the right answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you feel like throughout your marriage you were kind of pushing away those knowings that
Oh,
you had?
yeah. Yeah. There were many moments where I was like, oh God, this like hurts. Like this absolutely does not feel right. But I was young too. I
Mm-hmm.
was in my 20s when I got engaged, mid 20s when I got married, and then I think I was 29 or 30 when I had my first child.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just buying into what I thought I had to do at the time. Our parents, my parent generation, your parent generation, I'm sure like it was the same thing. It's like get married at this age, or no man is gonna want you. You have to marry a rich man, whatnot. But also another topic that we need to go into is that I was not the one making money before.
Mm.
He was, right? I was still in college at the time, and he was working already. Not like super wealthy or rich, but he was working. But then no one ever taught me that my business could explode at one point. My little side hustle can take off, and if you don't have a prenup, you're not
Mm.
protected, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one thing that I feel very strongly about now is with the next generation, especially because I have two girls, is it's not about if and when you get divorced. I always tell people it's like when you go into someone's car, it's like you're not gonna, because you don't trust a driver, you're putting on your seatbelt. No, you just do that because that's what you do, right?
Yeah.
That's the same thing with prenups. Like you just
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what the outcome is gonna be. And no one has ever taught me. I didn't even know what a prenup was until until Kanye West came out with his song. I was like, what is that?
I love that Kanye West was your source of education.
I mean, he's definitely not the person to go to when it comes to education, but
Listen,
that's
you
the first
get
time I learned
yeah.
about what a prenup was. I was like, and I was young, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever. It's fine. And they also have a bad rap, right? And
Yeah.
obviously Kanye didn't help with that. It's typically, I think the rap with prenups is for
The man to get
a
prenup.
man, an older,
Mm-hmm.
very wealthy,
Mm.
successful man who marries like a gold digger. And all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden this gold digger takes his money, and then runs with it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where like what prenups kind of still look like to people these days, but it's completely changed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to do a whole re-education, I feel, for the younger generation of women
Yeah.
to start looking at marriage differently. If
Yeah.
before it was so focused on all on love, which it is, love
Yeah.
always exists. But there are things like, to your point, partnerships. Like once your honeymoon stage is done, once you bring kids into the picture, once you start dealing with grief or loss, money issues,
Yeah.
like that requires a whole lot more than love,
Yeah, no, it's true. I think love just gets you started, but it's like the true foundation is can you go through hard times with this person and changes. And I think what's beautiful about you and Gary is that, when you got married to where you are now, you're a completely different person. Like,
Yeah.
you have your own business, you run a company, you have 3 boys, and you're no longer that young 20-year-old girl, but it's like being able to support someone through these changes and understand that everyone's going to evolve through these changes. And I remember this one time, and I remember my ex being like, and it was like in the middle of like a really hard time, and he was like, you've changed so much. And that's when I was like,
But it was said in like a negative, like
yes,
a judgmental
it was
negative
in a
way.
very negative tone. Like he said, I haven't changed, but you've changed so much. And instantly in that moment, I was like, this is why it's not working. We have to support each other in our changes. We're going to continuously evolve. And if we're not evolving, we're dying. We're going downhill for not evolving, right? And so that's when I was like, okay, this person cannot support me through my life changes. And he is stuck with how I was when I was in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not realistic for anyone to put that expectation on someone to be like, you have to be the exact same person that I married. No, that's not okay. And
Yeah.
so I
I
think
call it a golden cage, you know?
golden cage, yeah.
That's how it feels.
And I think that's one thing that I've learned is that a true partnership is being able to support each other throughout the changes, throughout the different life cycles. And yeah, they might be different,
Mm-hmm.
but still being able to love them throughout that and grow with them.
And I think it's important to mention that it's not easy. Like I started really appreciating the fact that Gary's able to step back and let me go through my own revolutions as
Yeah.
a woman from being 20-year-old to now 33. And I always tell him there's probably like 100 more to come.
Yeah.
But it requires a lot of patience, a lot of humility, a lot of many things, especially for him because he's older and he went through all of this already. So usually when you're like doing this again, you're like, you're impatient. Like,
Yeah.
okay, let me tell you the answers
Yeah.
because I know how it goes. But I think that early on he recognized that you need to step back, let me do my thing. You can give me your inputs here and there, but this
Yeah.
is my journey to take. And I think that in every relationship, like it's unfortunate that your ex couldn't do that, but it's a hard thing to
Yeah,
do.
it is a hard thing to do. And kind of going into the topic of like femininity and masculinity, right? I think for men especially, this is a whole new era of the women that are coming into fruition right now. It's like this has never happened before where women are the ones that are either making the same amount of money or maybe even more money, and also being able to be the mother and also bringing home the bread as well. And so men have to also be in a place where they feel so comfortable with themselves and being like, okay, there's a big shift happening here and this dynamic is changing. And not all men can do that and be comfortable with that because they were raised traditionally to be the ones that have to be the man and have to bring home the bread or else where's their value, right? And I think there's a huge shift right now in our generation that no, those rules no longer exist. So props to you, Gary.
I know. I need
Yeah.
Gary to. You know what? It's scary because to your point with the shift that's happening, I feel like there's been a lot of amazing examples for girls to look up to of women that manage to, get all the things done and achieve what they want to achieve and still be in their feminine and know when to switch to the masculine. I have 3 boys. And honestly, looking at the landscape, I mean, thank God I have Gary, but there is not many examples out there of a
No.
healthy masculinity, of a man that's in, look at pop culture, that I can be like, oh, look, this is how a healthy, masculinity looks like.
Yeah.
So when I think about teenage years, when I think about when they're going to start looking to the outside to tell them about their identity,
Yeah.
that scares me
Yeah.
for boys.
I cannot relate. Like
Yeah.
I never this is so weird because most of my friends have girls. I have 2 daughters. My sister just had a daughter. Like I'm around women or girls, like little girls so much, but like I've never really met an all actually no, you're the first all boy mom, like 3 boy mom. You're
Yeah.
right, there's no real examples out there.
Yeah.
But it's
It's scary. So all the healthy masculinity men out there, you got to show up.
but it's funny because I think for a long time in my marriage, because I had to play up that role of being masculine and holding up that kind of role for the family, because I was making the money and I was the one that's kind of bringing the family together. So there was no room for me to discover my femininity. There was no room for me to explore my softness. And so I've always identified a little bit more masculine, actually a lot more masculine. That's where my natural energy comes from. and where I feel comfortable in. Like you could put me in a boardroom with all men, I feel good there. Like I feel like I could, I don't know, not one up them, but I feel a little competitive in that sense. But when
Mm,
it comes to like rediscovering myself, especially post divorce of who I am, we're all born with some sort of feminine nature in us. And I really had to take time to discover who that was
mm.
and feel comfortable in my softness. And I think there's a beauty in being able to hold both. And that's something that's pretty new for me.
To be honest with you, I have the space to be more in my feminine throughout my marriage, but my character and what I was exposed to growing up, because
Mm.
my mother, she
Mm.
is a firecracker. She is so deep into the survival fight,
Mm.
ambition, motivation, like so much in it. And she was always the one that was pushing forward. So I grew up seeing that.
Mm.
And in my subconscious, although I've always like, I don't want that, in my subconscious, that's how I'm programmed as
Yeah,
well, right?
yeah.
Because what you see is what you
Right,
become.
exactly.
So I started noticing this really taking over me, especially when we started building the business. And I do enjoy it. It's one of the things that truly, makes me feel happy when I am in that doing mode.
Yeah,
But it is in the past 2 years, I've been also trying to figure out like what is femininity to me?
yeah,
How does it feel? How do I move around it?
yeah.
And I think that a lot of us are disconnected from it because we were living in a very masculine focused
Mhm.
society.
Yeah.
So I think that across the board for so many women, they feel that.
Yeah.
How did you go about starting to discover that side for yourself?
I think this is silly, but once I became single, I was like, I cannot scare the men out there because I'm like, I hate men. I'm gonna kill all the men out there. Like, I got screwed up. No, so I was like, okay, I can't live like that. I went through a period where I was like, I'm never gonna date a guy ever again. I don't need a single man in my life. I don't need
Mm-hmm.
sex ever again in my life, and I'll totally be okay. Like
Mm-hmm.
I went through that, and I think most divorcees like go through that period when they like are men haters.
Right.
But
It's the detox.
it's a detox, it's like getting it out of the system. But once it got out of the system, not that I was ready to date, and I actually luckily never had to get on a dating app because I would not how to navigate that. But I think it was just about having fun because I think in all of us, we are children. Like we are born with childlike moments or childlike experiences, and we all have something in us where we want to have fun and be children again. And so for me, one of my biggest goals of 2022, so previous year from last year, was to have fun because the divorce was just taking a toll on me. And I knew that it was going to be a long journey. And one of my friends who was going through a divorce, she was like, Chriselle, like, you have to find moments of fun in between because this journey is long and it's going to kill you. And so you
Mm.
have to go out there and have fun and don't feel guilty about it. So I remember when I filed, I was like really, really miserable for 6 months. I didn't do anything. But quickly after that, I was like, okay, I'm going to put myself out there. Doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and date and sleep around, but I want to go out there and just dance and have fun and almost like feel like I'm in college again with my friends. So
Yeah.
that's when once I realized that I love to have fun, I still have it in me. I still love going out and dancing with my friends and getting a little attention from guys. That was like exciting for me because I haven't had that in so long.
Because you didn't allow
I
yourself?
didn't allow myself. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't allow myself. I like blocked just men out of my life because I was trying to work on my marriage and I was like, I'm gonna make this work. Like this is like it was just a point where I was like, this is the most important thing in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
so even if a guy's trying to give me attention, like I don't need it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I just didn't notice it. And so when I was going through that period of just being single and having fun, that's when I was like, okay, like I think I have it in me. Like so it was like baby steps. And then after that, I think when I realized that I have this spark in me and I could go into a room and be like, I'm here, I'm
Mm.
excited. It's this energy that you give off, right? And I just had all this energy and my friend Jeannie, she was like, "You're like a shining star." She was like, "I literally saw you from across the room and you were just like glowing and beaming." And that's the energy that people notice, and I think that's the feminine energy that's coming from within, being like, "I'm here, I'm so happy, I feel so comfortable, I love myself, I'm just
Mm.
here to have a good time." And during that time, I actually met my boyfriend because it was his
Because who
energy.
cannot see that glow,
Yeah,
right? It was attracting.
yeah, and I wasn't obviously looking for anybody, but because his energy matched my energy, and he was like, and he's also in fashion, he's like, "Yeah, you're cute, but, like, I'm around beautiful people all the time, but there's something about you that was, like, really just striking." And it
Mm.
was that energy that I had in me, and that's when I was like, "Oh, this is my true self. This is the inner child coming out, just loving life, having fun, feeling so good and confident in my skin." And I've never experienced that ever in my life because somewhere along the way, probably in my teenage years, I lost it, right? We all lose that kind of spark of like, I'm just excited to live, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think because we're kind of on this, check mark journey
Yeah.
where, okay, we did college and now we need to find a serious job and now it's time to get into
Yeah.
adulting and you just kind of start letting that go.
Yeah.
And I agree. It's really sad. And I'm happy that you had an opportunity to realize that and to go after it.
Yeah.
But you realized it after your divorce. You
Yeah.
have two daughters.
Yeah.
So how do you gonna go about that? And how do you gonna advise them to not lose it when they're going into marriages or
Yeah.
relationships?
I think it's all about being present because when I go back to those moments of just like pure joy and happiness. It was truly because I had no agenda. Like, I had no agenda except to be present and enjoy. That's literally it. And so even now I try to, and life has moved on and, different problems, different things happening in my life, but I try to bring that lesson that I learned during that time back. And it's like, okay, it doesn't matter. Like whatever, like I had a crazy morning this morning. Hence the reason why I was late. It's like nothing matters right now. The only thing that
Mm-hmm.
matters is that I have you in front of me. You're in a cute outfit. Like I love talking to you about this and we're connecting. And I have blocked everything out of my head and my life right
Mm.
now just to be here because I want to be here. And I think I just have to practice that. And people just have to practice us. My kids have to practice that wherever we go. And I know it's really hard, especially because you could probably speak onto this more than I can because you have a little older kids than I do. My girl is turning 9 tomorrow, or sorry, next week. And then Colette is 5. But, there's social media and technology. My kids are not exposed yet, but I'm sure it's just around the corner when they're going to start asking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's really hard to teach them like, okay, no, let's just enjoy right now when they're like, okay, I want to be on the iPad. I want to like talk to my friends. I want to be on Snapchat, whatever that is, right?
Mm.
And so my challenges with that will come when it comes. But as of now, I'm always constantly telling them it doesn't matter like what we have to do later. Let's focus on what we have to do now, right?
Yeah.
What we have right now in front of us. My oldest daughter is constantly asking, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" Like always forward thinking, right? And I'm like, do you notice that person walking in the red shirt? She's like, no. I'm like, because you're not present. Like you see
Mm.
things when you're present. And so I'm trying to teach her like not to always be forward thinking because I think we're all born or not born, we're all trained to think about the future and what's gonna
Mm-hmm.
happen. And that's fine too. It's important to kind of know where you're going, but then you kind of have to leave that at the door and walk away from it and be like, okay, that's where I want to go, but let's go back to what's here right now.
Mm. That's a beautiful lesson.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm trying to do with my kids and even with my time with them because I do co-parent and I have the girls 50% of the time. And and it's always about, okay, we have each other for the next 2 weeks. How can we maximize every single moment that we're together? Because the next 2 weeks, I'm not going to see you guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that practice has also taught us how to be more present.
How did that redefinition of your relationship with your ex, because before moving on, you need to make sure that everything is, especially when you have kids, everything is figured out. We know where we stand, we know how we go about it. How did the process of like, okay, we're not together anymore, we're co-parenting now, how did that relationship dynamic change? Was it like very challenging for you
It
guys?
was challenging. You know, I think I talk openly a lot about how we're great co-parents, but it took us almost 3 years to get here, right? And I don't think I would ever share kind of the beginning parts because it was not pretty. It was exactly what you think about in movies of like
Emotions taking over.
emotions taking over and be like, no, like that's not fair. You know, let's go back to the drawing board to figure this out. But we're finally at a place where, and I have to say, it's as cheesy as it sounds, time does heal. And you have to practice patience, even though you're trying to figure it out. Because I think there's some sort of revolution happening right now with like our generation of women, that so many women now, because I've talked openly about my story, and maybe I'm just feeling it because I'm so open about my divorce, they're coming to me and asking me these questions about divorce. And not that I ever want to encourage it, but I want to be there for them if they are ever in that position. So that's the number one thing. It's like I want to have a great co-parent relationship with my partner, just like you. And I'm like, look, it could take years, and it also can never get there. It just depends on the person, right? I have a friend who is pretty well known, and she goes on holidays with her ex-husband. Like every holiday, like they go on summer trips together. I don't think I could ever see myself doing that, to be honest. So everyone is different, right?
Yeah.
And you can't prescribe to what one person is doing is the right thing. And for me personally, once we got to a place where we're like, okay, this is, you hurt me, I hurt you, but that's that, right? And the divorce is, we're figuring that out. But one equal thing is that we both love our kids tremendously, equally, right? And so how can we both be amazing parents, even better parents than what we were before while we're co-parenting? And I think that's the commonality between my ex and I, is that we just want to raise really amazing humans. And so whether it be jumping on a call once a month to talk about catching up with, we call it our strategy call just because we don't really talk about anything else besides.
I love that. Very clear direction.
Very clear, our strategy for the kids. And we just talk about kind of what we see going on in each other's household, just so we're aware where they're at emotionally. And, you know, basic things like activities, you know, camps, like schooling, all of that kind of stuff. We
All
go
the logistics.
all the logistics. And we just look at it as like it's a project, because it's truly a project. And it's, as much as we love them, we're not putting our emotions to each other. We're not involving that at all. We're just trying to successfully launch this project, which is launching 2 people into the world. And once we do that, we've done our job. And
you see, it sounds like your partnership is working way better in this capacity than in the, you know, married couple capacity.
And you know what's funny? We were just talking about this because I was watching your reels or Instagram. I was laughing so hard when you're telling Gary about like, I'm going away and this is what you have to do. This. I'm sure you exaggerated a little bit because I'm sure Gary's an amazing partner and he, you know,
he has his strengths for sure. Logistics is not one of
logistics
them, though.
Is not one of them.
Love you.
But we love you, Gary. But it's funny because I also think that men know that the women are just going to handle it. Like that's what we do. And almost every single married woman I know has this conversation with their partner. Maybe one out of few people that don't have to, where like the men are better than the women. I have some of those friends, but very, very rare. And so the common question is within my friend group is like, how do we co-parent like Chriselle without having to go through a divorce? Like, how do we literally split the responsibilities in half?
Yeah.
But not get a divorce because I love my partner. And that's been like the the trend between my friend group, because it's the fact of the matter is that when you're divorced, both sides have to pull their own weight, right?
Mhm.
And for a while, I was like really nervous because I was like, he's not going to be able to do it. Like, I have to go in there and like do everything for him. And I was kind of in the beginning. And then I was talking to my therapist, and she was like, you just really need to let him do his thing and also let the kids see their dad as he is. Whether he's great at something or he's not great at something, that's going to be their experience with their dad, and that's not
Mm.
your problem. And so it took me a while to really accept that. And it's brought me a lot of freedom because when the kids are with their dad, it's almost like it's your responsibility. Like, not my problem anymore. I love them, but that is an equal partnership, right?
Absolutely.
And it's like, if you really, really, really need me, obviously you can call me and I'll be there. But, because his own ego and my own ego, like we try not to ever get there, right? So
Mhm.
we all take our own responsibilities very seriously now. And I think it's been a confident builder probably in him too, because these are things that he didn't have to do before when we were married.
I think that I recognize that that's exactly what needs to be done in order for Gary to get involved in certain things that maybe hasn't been involved in, is to step back and just be like, listen, you do your thing. And actually
You're
during
doing it
this
this week.
yeah, no, I'm literally doing it this week. Yesterday we were talking about something and he's like, I did this and I overreacted. And I'm like, don't worry about it. It's your thing. You make the decisions. You're good. Like you guys will figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of on us. It's a work we need to do as women
Yeah.
to also
Yes.
let go,
Yes.
right? It's not because I feel like for us, when your friends who are married, they're like, well, we expect them to do all these things too. And the way I was with Gary as well, I want him to do those things, but I want it to look the certain way, the
Yeah.
way I want it to look. And I think that's where the problem, we're kind
Yeah.
of like helping
Yeah.
them to continue being like, well, I can't do it like that.
Yeah,
Let's not.
exactly. No, I think
So,
it's great. And I think it does take practice on us to be
mm,
kind of just let go. So, that voice on that sound on TikTok, like, am I the problem? Like,
oh, always.
am I the problem?
I love it. Taylor Swift truly
Yeah.
wrote a very important song.
Yeah.
I remember watching you. I've known you for a long time, and you've been very open and public about sharing your family life and your marriage and your kids. And then you decided to share the divorce journey and everything you've been going through. Were you worried? Like, what gave you the
Mm,
courage to be like, I'm opening this up?
yeah. I was worried. And I think I had a big learning lesson during that period because I was one of the first creators at the time to have kids, and that was just kind of posting anything and everything at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really know and think through what the repercussion could be or what I would have to face if it didn't work out. And so I was mad at myself for a while. I was like, why did I let everyone in to everything of my life? And now I'm responsible to tell them. Like, why do I have to tell them? But it's my responsibility because I chose to expose my family. I chose to put my life out there. And my community, my followers, they supported me along the way. And imagine it's like a movie. I'm not saying that my life is a movie, but
It is a
it's a
movie.
similar concept, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
you're following along someone's journey long term for 10 years, and all of a sudden you decide that you're just gonna not share anything. That's not fair. That's not
Mm-hmm.
fair for people who invested their time, supported you with their money, product launches, all of that. And so for me, like I was quiet for a long time. There was a period when I was going through my divorce where I didn't post anything personal. I was just showing like fancy outfits just to, make up for the lack of kind of personal content that I was not putting out there.
Mm-hmm. Which
And
brought us Rich Mom.
yes, Rich Mom was that during that
I
time.
love that.
I miss Rich Mom too. But I was able to hide myself through Rich Mom, through like really kind of fashiony type of posts. But that period, my community didn't feel connected with me. That's like the one thing that I kept hearing over and over is like, I just don't feel connected with you anymore. And that breaks my heart because our online community is our extended family at this point. As delusional as that
Mm-hmm.
sounds, for me, I'm like, you guys have been with me from the beginning since I was in college, and I can't just drop you guys like this. And so I felt like a certain responsibility to share with them, but also for me, it's like I hope that my pain is not in vain. I hope that I could help people through my story, and I hope that through my shared experience that I'm going to share to the world, that if it could help a number of people go through a hard time, then my job has been done as a creator,
Mm-hmm.
as an influencer. And so that's why I decided, once I felt the courage to be able to share with them, I did. And the outpour of support, outpour of messages that I got from people that are also going through something similar, it was really encouraging for me. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad that I did it because I think a lot of people are struggling silently, but no one talks
Absolutely.
about it. And so, yeah. And now I feel like I'm the go-to divorce person
For now,
for
you
now.
know, it goes in waves.
Yeah.
You said in one of your videos that divorce is the death of your old self, and it's so hard to let go of your
Mhm.
old self.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you let her go at
Mm.
this point?
Yeah, I did. I absolutely did. And I might bring back my old videos, but I've been on YouTube for a very long time, and I actually hid all my videos because it triggered me for a very long time. I think I'm in
Mm.
a good place now, so I'll probably like resurface them back up because they're fun to look at. But as I was going through all my old footage during my divorce, I was like, that's not who I am. Like I feel so cringe just watching my videos. And I had such a hard time just sitting there and being like, "That's me, that's who I was." And so I just didn't even wanna, like, face her.
You know what? This is such an amazing point because many people that go through seasons in their lives
Mhm.
don't have the opportunity
Mm.
to see themselves,
Yeah.
how they behave, their mannerisms, the way they speak, the way they look. You don't have that insight. But as a
Yeah.
creator who documents their life, you can go and see her.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can only imagine how like gut wrenching it
Wrenching it.
is.
Yeah, and there a lot of the vlogs because I documented my life by vlogging on YouTube, and, like, half the things I was said, I was so ignorant. But that was the naivety that I had in me, right? That was pre-divorce, that was pre-hardships, and I've been through some, hardships here and there, but nothing life-threatening, nothing
Mm,
life-changing as I have within the last 3 years. And so now it should be okay for me to go back and see this person because I might think she's cute. But when I was going through the divorce, I was like, I feel so stupid. Like, I can't believe I said those things.
mm,
I remember there was one vlog that I posted. I was like, I would never get a divorce. Divorce are for people who quit on their marriage and they just gave up on themselves. They didn't fight hard enough. And I saw that and my jaw dropped. I was like, wow, that bit me in the ass.
But isn't that what life is about?
Yeah.
To, say something, contradict yourself. Like,
Yeah.
that's really what we're here for.
Yeah, and that's growth, and that's why I don't like, yeah, cancel culture, I know that it's a whole thing now,
Mm,
but you say things when you're not even the person that you're no longer that person anymore, and
mm-hmm.
it haunts you, right? And you're like, "I can't believe I said those things. I can no longer relate to that. I've outgrown that person." And I think that's beautiful, and I think that's going back to our conversation of growth.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be ever changing, you have to be ever evolving and growing constantly, or else what, you're gonna see the same? I mean, imagine myself being in that same mindset,
No,
right?
God forbid. And I think that there's also a healing on its own when you are able to look at her,
Mhm.
your old self, and just kind of hug her and
Yeah,
just, it comes from a place of love and
yeah,
understanding and acceptance rather than, ugh, I can't, because
yeah,
it starts there. It
yeah,
starts
it
like,
does
oh
start
my
there.
God, this is so embarrassing. But it grows. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
sure you know it better than anyone because you've been through it recently,
yeah,
where now you're probably at a place where it's like, this is so beautiful.
yeah, yeah, it is beautiful, and I know what I'm saying now, maybe in the next 10 years, I'm gonna be like, "I was so dumb, like, I can't believe I said that." But that is the beauty of life. That is the beauty of getting older
Hmm.
and getting wiser and just getting to know yourself better.
You know what I'm always so curious about, especially with women like yourself? You're very strong, independent.
Mhm.
When you go through such a difficult phase, an evolution, and you feel weak and broken,
Mm,
but you don't want to slip into this
mm,
victimhood or feeling like a burden.
mm,
How did you manage to hold that like duality of being weak and strong at the same time?
yeah. I think this one is tricky for me because what I would do in the past, I would just overwork. I would just overwork so I don't have to deal with my problems because work always, one, I love my work. I love being able to create. But two, I think it allowed me to escape from my reality. But
Hmm.
when I was going through my divorce and I was so weak, I couldn't eat, I couldn't get out of bed, I couldn't function. I was so depressed and miserable during that time, and I was so scared. I didn't know how this was all going to unfold. And I'm not the type of person to ask for help at all. Like, I'm such a stubborn Aries, and I'm always like, I could do this on my own. One of the most beautiful moments for me where I asked my community to come help me, like my family and my best friends, my sister, and so it was a really beautiful moment because they all came. My parents, they came and they stayed with me. They ended up selling their house in San Francisco to come live with me in LA for an indefinite amount of time. Now they're
Mm.
here forever. I think for women like us that are incredibly strong, I think we have to practice the ability to just share and also ask for help because people want to help.
When I saw that video when your dad was playing, like singing
Yeah.
to you, oh my God, I started crying
Oh, I
because
know.
everything was like bubbling up. But it was just so beautiful
Yeah.
to see that you let yourself surrender
Hmm.
to, I want to say the emotion is shame, because I think it's first shame. You feel kind of like
Yeah.
ashamed that you feel so weak, so
Yeah.
low. You kind of expect yourself to be stronger. But then to really open up and let all that love and, like,
Yeah.
people to hold you,
Yeah.
I think that's just.
It's beautiful. And I think that's the one thing that I look on the last, I would say, the first 2 years, because it's my third year, but the first 2 years, that's probably the one thing that continuously replays in my head. It's not the nasty conversations. It's not the lawyers going back and forth. It's not all this heartache. It's my community being there to support me. And it's almost like the death of something, right? It is a death of
Mm,
something. We all get together and celebrate the birth of someone's kid, someone's birthday, a graduation, I don't know, like anything, right? A funeral, even a death of
mm-hmm,
something. But why do people think that they have to go through divorce alone? Why do they think that they're on this lonely island? Because it feels that way. Not many people talk about it. But because it is a death of something, it's equal to needing that support and that community to come together to grieve with you, to be able to help you walk through it. And and yeah, I'll never ever forget that moment when they all just came together for me.
mm.
Yeah.
And then I loved when you celebrated your 6 months post divorce.
Thank you.
That was so iconic. And you know what? You're talking about, going through the grief and all these things together post divorce, but it's also the celebration of it, because
Yeah.
it's a milestone
Yeah.
for yourself personally.
Yeah.
Nothing against your partner, but like you've come this far.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the end of an era and it's the beginning of a new book. And so why not celebrate it? So more than like, hallelujah, I'm free, although you have a little bit of that, it's more of like, thank God that's done. And
Mm,
so that calls a celebration, right?
absolutely.
And
I mean,
so,
living in the moment, being present, right? Knowing
yeah,
when to get some balloons and
yeah.
pop champagne.
And to be fair, that video that went viral where I like blew out the candle on my cake, or it says like, I'm free, I'm done, or something like that. I forgot what it was, what it
Mm.
said, but it went pretty viral, and people were tagging me on their divorce cakes or even like breakup cakes. I'm like, is this a thing now? But that was actually not even a party. It was like literally after a shoot. It was like around the corner, and it was my team, just like 5 of us, and they brought me out
Yeah.
a cake, and it was really cute.
It's symbolic more than
It's a
anything.
symbolic
It's
moment.
really
Yeah.
not. I know. It's so interesting how our job is to create content,
Yeah.
and sometimes content can be taken in any
Yeah.
way possible for
Yeah.
whoever's watching it.
I know. I mean, it's also, I've learned a lot about that too. It's like what, as I was talking about earlier, of I didn't know what exposing my entire life would be like on the flip side. And so I think now I'm a lot more careful too. I still do. I still share a lot of my life, but I think
Where are
there's
your boundaries now?
boundaries are just my personal relationships with people, my romantic relationship. I openly talk about how I've been with my boyfriend for 2 years, but I don't show him at all. And people are like, why aren't you showing him? And I'm like, do I have to? Did I? And so I think people have gotten used to it now, but I think they've also gotten used to me just showing everything. And those are the boundaries that we have to, make for ourselves. And even with my oldest daughter, Chloe, she's, pre-teen-ish, and I'm just a lot more thoughtful now. If she wants to be in a video, that's one thing, but even with like jobs and stuff that come through that they want my kids to be in, now I always ask the girls like, "Is it something you guys want to do?" I involve them a lot more now, whereas before I was like, "You got to do it. You have no
Yeah.
choice."
Yeah.
But yeah, just being a lot more thoughtful and putting boundaries around things that are important to me. And I could expose myself as much as I want. I have no shame. But when it comes to people around me that I love, I'm a lot more careful. I tread lightly there now.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
How do you feel like this experience, like the divorce and the process of finding a new identity? How does this help you? How do you relate to people now? Like, how do you relate to yourself? Did it change the way you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I just have a lot more confidence now. I think before I was confident, but in a different way. I was confident in more of like, I have this many followers, I built this business, like in more of a superficial way. But I have like this really deep inner confidence now where I'm like, I could go through anything and I'll be okay. And I think people like whether it be hanging out with new friends or going to event or talking to people, interviews, whatever, I just don't care as much, and I just feel really good about that. Whereas before I thought about every little person. I'm like, what are they gonna think? Who like is this gonna make me look a certain way? Even like something as small as Fashion Week, right? And you do the Fashion Week round as well, so you know how it is. It's as successful as like my friends are, like, and even myself, it's like some people just don't invite you to certain shows, and that would like hurt me at times. I'm like, why am I not invited? But now I'm like, I have absolutely no fucks. Like, I give no fucks about this. Like, this is like, I'm so confident in myself, is that like, this is who I am. And it's either you like me and you don't. If you don't, that's totally fine. And let's move on.
It seems to me also that you are less judgmental
Yeah.
towards yourself and towards other people. There's something in your even mannerism, the way you carry yourself, that changed.
Yeah. I think I was, and that's a little bit about going back to my old videos. I felt like I knew it all. I felt like I knew what the perfect person would look like, the perfect life, the perfect marriage. But I think coming out of this, I realized that I don't know shit. And that's really humbling.
Oh,
That's
it's
really humbling
beautiful.
when you're like, I actually don't know how this works. I'm open to it again, but I don't know. And I think when you're in a place of just learning and growth, like there's no room for judgment. You're just learning from other people, and you're just an open book. And so I am a lot more open to whether it be meeting new friends, meeting new people, new opportunities. Before it would be very, yeah, a little judgy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I feel like we all kind of have to go through in order to break that. Because it's,
Yeah.
in a way, it's how we safeguard ourselves, right?
Yeah.
From the world.
Yeah.
So it takes a little kick in the ass to be like, oh, okay.
How about for you? I feel like you've been on the internet for ages too.
Mm.
Like you're on YouTube first, right?
Yeah, YouTube was my first
Yeah.
platform, and I went through a similar process as you with the kids, where before even looking back at my older content, I was showing a lot. When the kids were small, I was showing a lot, but as I think Jake hit like 6 or 7, my eldest, I started pulling back. And the pandemic was a lot of like family vlogs, and
Yeah.
then after the pandemic, it was like a very sharp
Yeah.
decline because I've realized that I don't want to open my household to
Yeah.
everybody. I don't think
Yeah.
it's fair for the kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's been really easy for me to do because
Yeah.
that was very difficult for me, like opening up like that and exposing like that didn't come naturally.
Yeah.
So I was very relieved to be like, okay, I'm letting it go. But yeah, so there was a lot of evolution there. And I think that with every year as I get older, I am humbled by the world just like you, being like, I don't, you know what? I don't know everything. I don't know what I'm talking about. I might change my mind tomorrow. But there's definitely an aspect of like freedom to that.
There is a sense of freedom.
Yeah, you move with like, you move lighter.
That's what it is. I think that's the word. I think you just feel light to the world and you feel light yourself and you're just like kind of free flowing and it's graceful, it's easy and not saying that life is easy, but you don't take things too seriously and life doesn't take you seriously either. So it's just kind of like, everything passes and that's how I look at things. And when you look at it at that light, you're just like, okay, I could get through this too and nothing's that serious. So
Nothing is that serious.
I love that you know your boundaries too though, because it gets really tricky with family content and like as the kids are getting older. You know what I realize is even with my TikTok recently, so my boyfriend also has kids and his kids were spending some time with us over winter break and they're just like the most lovely kids, but they're really into TikTok. And I kind of knew that from afar, like, oh, kids are all on TikTok, but I didn't really care. I was like, I don't really know these kids. I could post whatever I want. Obviously, on this podcast, you've realized that I have kind of a potty mouth and I say things like talking about anything and everything. But once I spend a lot of time with these kids, these teens, and I see what they're into, we post TikToks together. I'm like, okay, like I really have to consider this now, right? Like anything that I say, they're gonna watch and they're gonna see, and it's gonna get back to them, right? And but I never had to view that with my kids because my kids aren't on social, so they would never see it until maybe way later. But now that I have that kind of idea in mind, I'm like, okay, let me really think through what I'm gonna post.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a moment like that when I think that's where we started moving away from the family vlogs a few years ago because we had the moment when we filmed like a really cute moment. I don't even remember. It was, I think, Ben or Jake. And it was a cute moment for us. But then they went to school and they came back and they're like, Mom, a kid in my class said that he was watching a video with his mom yesterday where I don't know if he would like farted or something. I don't even remember what it was. And I swear, like my life just flashed in front. I was so angry at myself.
Yeah.
And that's when I went to Gary. I'm like, we're done with this.
It just takes that one moment.
It takes that one moment because it wasn't such a big deal, but I could see that it was just for him. He was like, how did that,
and it's not like his, like, maybe now, but like before, it's not like they could be like, I don't want to do this. And you're just kind of freely, filming because that's what you do to like support the family and like get content out. But yeah, I've been there too, where with my boyfriend's kids. And so even when I'm filming now, I'm just like, okay, like this could be embarrassing for them. So I probably shouldn't film, you
I
know?
just know that, especially for Jake is 10 years old, most of his friends, he doesn't have social media yet, but most of his friends do, and they
Mhm.
follow me on all platforms.
Yeah.
So I'm very conscious of what I'm saying. I even stopped, I do my outfit of the
Oh,
days,
where you're like,
and yeah, you're like in
yeah,
your underwear
I
and
know.
bra.
I've been thinking that too.
I stopped. Now I'm already with pants or skirt on. Like for me, like, okay, now the underwear is not gonna be shown, but it sounds so silly for people
No,
that
it's
are outside of
true.
this industry, but
Yeah.
we're learning to navigate it
Yeah.
ourselves while doing it because
Yeah.
it's a new industry. Like we are not, there's
Yeah.
no playbook here.
There
So
isn't.
you're really reconsidering your choices
I mean,
often.
you when the kids are in the mix and they're like, "Mom, you're embarrassing me," then you're like, "Okay, gotta rethink everything now."
Oh my God. You touched on you being in a fairly new relationship. You've been together for 2 years. But when you went into that relationship, were you carrying certain fears with you?
hmm And I still am. I think it's trauma is trauma, and I think we all have our own traumas and triggers, and it's up to us to really get a hold of them and, whether it's talking to a therapist or talking with your partner or whatnot. But yeah, in the beginning, actually, it was less in the beginning because in the beginning, I was like, this is gonna be fun. Like, this is cute. It's sexy. It's hot. Like, yeah, let's just have a good
Mm-hmm.
time. And then as things started to progress, and, obviously he has kids. And that was also what my one rule is like, I'm not gonna date a guy who doesn't have kids because I'm no longer having kids. I am done. That department is closed. And so I knew that going into this relationship, if and when things got more serious, we would have to talk about kids and how that was going to look like. And so we're there now, right? We're at a place where we had our very first blended family vacation, which was really, really lovely. But there's different dynamics that come into play that I've never, ever had to think of, right?
Mm.
And so I go back to being like, okay, this is like we're going back to where I was, right? Where like as one family unit, and it brings back memories and it brings back feelings. But the main difference now is that I have a partner and I could talk to him about anything. And
Mm.
I have a mature partner who is very confident in himself, very successful. And he's an open book. And so I've gotten into the practice of just saying what I think because that was also a very hard thing for me to do, knowing that like I didn't have a partner before. And I would just like it would go in and out the other ear or he wouldn't even listen. But now that I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, I could talk to you about my fears and what I'm worried about. We talk a lot. We spend a lot of time just talking. And
Mm.
a lot of it is me of being like, I'm nervous, I don't know how this is gonna turn out and work out. And I think just that alone is progress in itself for me
Mm.
to just be open with my fears and emotions and being able to talk openly without feeling like someone's judging me. But I am aware that I have still trauma and triggers around marriage, but it's something that I'm still working through.
Do you think you'll ever get married again?
I'm open to it. I don't think right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have to really work on myself. I don't know. For me, the word marriage, it's heavy. It's not one of those things where it's like, oh, we're gonna like see how it works out. It's like if we're gonna get married, this is gonna work. Like this has to work. Like we're
Mm.
gonna do our best to make it work as much as possible. So for me, it's like I have to work through my traumas and triggers of those moments of marriage when it was really, really hard. And I think I still have some time before I'm ready for that. But I hope I do because I do believe in it. I think it is a beautiful union. Do I need it? No. Does anyone need it? No.
Okay, so I want to talk about that actually,
Yeah.
because that is a very interesting point. I feel like, like we mentioned, obviously there was so much progress for women in society, how marriage is viewed. And I even remember, I think it was maybe a year ago or a few months, I don't know. What is time? I don't know.
Yeah.
But remember Marada, she posted a TikTok being like, being divorced by 30 is chic.
Uh,
And it was just so interesting to me to see kind of the comments, and because it's a lot of the younger generation, and it's very different than what we grew up with
Yeah.
and how we view marriage.
Yeah.
And how do you kind of feel about that? Like, where do you
Yeah.
see the landscape is?
I have my thoughts on. I mean, I love that Emily has been open about kind of her divorce and kind of pokes fun at herself at times about like having something not work out.
Mm-hmm.
But I think marriage, and maybe because I am still a little bit more traditional, I think marriage is a sacred thing. I think it's something that should be not taken lightly, right? And so I think we've come to a place where the term of marriage or having a wedding or having an engagement ring has become so casual where it's like, I want to do it because I want to have that chic wedding or whatnot. So I think the idea of why people get married has changed a lot and hence
Mm-hmm.
the divorce rates are high. But I don't think anyone, if they could avoid divorce, it's not chic. Like divorce is not
Mm-hmm.
chic. It's
It's messy
It's
and ugly
messy
and
and
running
ugly,
mascara.
and I don't and that's what I always tell people, I don't want to be the advocate for divorce. I don't
Mm.
want to be the woman who's like, "You're unhappy, go get divorced," right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really about sitting there and learning about yourself and yeah, maybe the person you become after is chic. Maybe the person that the old self that you've shut it off, and then the new self, that person is chic and cool and hot and confident. But I think divorce in itself is not chic. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's ugly and brutal and it's something that no one ever should really go through. But I think marriage is a sacred thing. I think because of how I was raised, maybe. But I think it's a beautiful thing. It's a union of two people. But as I mentioned, it's not a need. It's not a need for anyone, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like we're all capable, especially women, we're capable of doing this life on our own. We could raise our kids on our own with our other girlfriends. We could run businesses. We could make our own money. We could cook. We could do everything. Do we need a man? Not necessarily. But partnership is a beautiful thing. And that is what marriage should really represent.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it doesn't work out. 60% of marriages don't work out. But then I think it's even more sacred for that reason.
Yes, I think that because it's no longer a need,
Yeah.
there is a longer period of like asking the questions,
Yeah.
right? Of like, if I am going into it, why am I going into it?
Yeah.
Am I being provided A, B, and C? It's no longer, because I think marriage didn't it start because back in the day when women needed to be under a
Yeah.
man or something, like
Yeah.
it was all a matter of survival where we don't need that anymore. But so I think now the process, like for you to arrive to a point where you say, okay, I'm ready to get married, there's like a real journey
Yeah.
to see if this is the right person for you, if you're in the right
Yeah.
headspace.
And I think it's less about, I think and again, you're such a rare gem, Valeria, because like you got married so young and you guys had this beautiful partnership and this beautiful family. And it doesn't necessarily always work out that way. But I have to say is now the generation now is getting married way later. Whereas like our generation or even our parent generation, they're getting married really early because that's what they did. That's what everyone did back then. And that was normal. But I think because now that we have more choice, especially for women, and we are coming in a lot of times with our own careers, our own money, property, just an idea of like what our life should be like or how we want it to look like. I think it's important now more than ever for two people to understand who they are completely without each other. So before it was more of like, I'm looking for my other half because I'm not complete without my other half. But now it's more of like, I am fine on my own. I'm whole myself. You're whole yourself. And we're coming together and we're making each other better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's a partnership to not fix what's broken, but it's a partnership to make things even better than they already are. And so I think that's my biggest advice to people is really take the time to discover yourself because you're going to go through so many changes and marriage will always be there. And
Yeah.
once you find a person where you're like, I could really see myself with this person and building this life with this person, and it just seems more enjoyable. Even though I could do it on my own, it just seems more enjoyable, and why not?
I think this is such an amazing, like your experience have taught you so much about yourself and you're able to share it with the world, which I think
Yeah.
is such a gift. Because I do think that, more young women are confused because now they're
Yeah.
between the traditional to what is
Yeah.
going on now. So it's a very confusing time to live
Yeah.
in.
What are your thoughts? I mean, you're one of the rare gems that, have been married for so long, and I'm sure you have so many people around you that are also going through divorce.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on just marriage and maybe even remarriage for your friends or like,
I think I love the concept. I'm also more traditional. I love the concept of a unit, of a partnership. To your point, I also believe that it is so different now. It's not a matter of, needing that person, it's a matter of wanting.
yeah,
So I think that's already such a beautiful way to walk into something like that. And although my marriage came from a place of Gary represented something that I've lacked my whole life,
mm,
he managed to fulfill that, and then we built something together. There's so many different scenarios. I think that for women and for men, honestly, to just come to a place where they're very honest with themselves
yeah,
and very self-aware and knowing what they want
yeah,
out of this partnership, it's very important. So
yeah,
I'm kind of all for, not getting married young.
yeah,
I also left home when I was 15. So
yeah, which is also very rare.
very
Yeah.
rare. And I feel like I had certain experience that were, before my time, or that are more kind of adult like, so that helped me at least believing that I'm ready. But yeah, I think that getting married older is where it's at. You're just really able to understand who you are and where you're going, so that's really important.
Yeah, I think so too.
So who, if you could tell me about the Chriselle today, without mentioning your your role as a mother or as a girlfriend, or just like who you are today, what would it be?
She is a very happy, present, confident lover of life.
Oh, I love that.
Which is completely different because before it was all about business.
Right.
But I just love life now. I just love being here. I love being able to experience new things, and yeah, an open book as well.
I
Yeah.
love that. Chriselle, thank you so much for
Thank
opening
you.
up and sharing all the things you've learned about yourself and about life. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Valeria. This was amazing.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't miss my newest episode right here. And if you're listening to the podcast on Apple or Spotify, please go and leave a review with your biggest takeaway. I love reading your thoughts. And if you have any suggestions for guests or topics, you can leave them in the comment section. And always, always remember, you are not alone.